The early morning in Manhattan always held its own distinct rhythm, the rush of traffic, the echoing horns, the hurried footsteps on the sidewalk, and the faint, comforting scent of brewing coffee drifting from street-side carts. Jack Miller stepped out of his small, third-floor walk-up apartment, a steaming hot coffee mug warming his hands. He took a deep breath, feeling the crisp chill of the autumn wind slice through his jacket, mingling with the rich, dark aroma of his fresh brew. This morning, everything seemed routine, the predictable chaos of the city, but beneath Jack's surface, a knot of unease was tightening. He knew, instinctively, that today would not be like the others. The streets were a tableau of humanity. Brisk commuters clutching briefcases, delivery guys with oversized backpacks weaving through the crowd, a handful of kids bouncing toward school, and the older folks taking their leisurely morning constitutional. Jack scanned the scene, seeing a miniature world in constant, frantic motion, each person carrying their own unread script. He wondered about their lives, the small joys and the quiet sorrows they hid behind their ordinary faces. As he ducked into his favorite coffee spot, the daily grind, Jack gave a quick nod to Laura, the barista who always met him with a contagious smile. "Morning, Jack. The usual strong black coffee today?" Laura asked, her voice bright and energetic. Jack returned the smile. "You know it, Laura, thanks." He snagged a small table near the window, his preferred spot for people watching. Cupping the mug, he watched the stream of people pass by, a vague sense of anticipation stirring inside him. His phone buzzed. A text message from Emily, his closest friend since college, flashed on the screen. "Jack, we need to talk. Meet tonight." Jack's heart did a sudden, hard thump. Emily was rarely this cryptic, and the immediate, cold certainty washed over him. This was something significant. He put the phone down, trying to regain his equilibrium, but the worry was already a low hum in his chest. All morning, Emily's face open, honest, rarely secretive, kept intruding, leaving him in a state of agitated suspense. He looked back out the window, watching the sunlight slice between the tall buildings, casting long, shifting shadows onto the street. He took a slow sip of coffee, feeling the warmth spread from his hands to his core. In that moment, the city continued its relentless pace, but for Jack, time had decelerated. A single question echoed in his mind: am I ready for whatever Emily is about to tell me? After paying, Jack left the daily grind, starting his walk down the avenue. The breeze was light, ruffling the hair across his forehead. He passed block after block of old brownstones with brick facades, feeling as if every brick held a secret piece of the city's history. The distant wail of sirens blended with the nearby chatter of pedestrians, creating a familiar, noisy, vibrant urban symphony. He inhaled deeply, trying to steady himself, but the nervous energy remained. Arriving at the office, he booted up his computer, but his eyes refused to focus on the screen. The daily deluge of emails, memos, and tasks felt utterly irrelevant next to Emily's 3-word text. He scrolled through news sites, reading but not absorbing, his gaze constantly drifting back to the phone on his desk. Part of him wanted to call her immediately, but the wiser voice whispered, "Be patient. Tonight we'll tell the story." At lunchtime, Jack decided to take a much longer walk than usual to burn off the anxiety. He cut through Central Park, where the trees were beginning their beautiful bronze transformation. Fallen leaves crunched lightly under his dress shoes. A few couples strolled hand in hand, runners gulped the cool air, and kids zoomed around the reservoir on bikes. Jack paused, breathing in the fresh, crisp air, attempting to clear his head, but the image of Emily, sharp and clear, remained, refusing to grant him true peace. As he walked, Jack replayed their shared history, late-night study sessions in the college library, sharing intimate confessions, dreams, and the inevitable failures. Emily had always been his anchor, the one friend who understood him without needing a verbal explanation. Now, this unexpected message made him sense she was guarding a monumental secret, or that something was about to fundamentally change the easy equilibrium of their relationship. The afternoon wore on, the light beginning to fade. The skyscrapers reflected soft shades of orange and pink against the darkening sky. Jack returned to his apartment, sitting by the window, watching the last of the day's commuters hurry home. He placed the phone on the table, his fingers instinctively stroking the screen as if he could divine Emily's hidden thoughts through the glass. Once more, he silently posed the question, what am I going to face tonight? The entire afternoon was a blur of waiting and suspense. He tried to work, but every incoming notification sound made his heart leap. He played out dozens of scenarios. Would Emily be excited, angry, or heartbroken? Was it personal, or about a shared professional concern? But no imagined scenario quite matched the tangible, churning anxiety he was currently experiencing. As evening fell, Jack prepared for the meeting meticulously. He chose a crisp navy button-down shirt, dark-washed jeans, and carefully shined his leather boots. In the mirror he looked himself squarely in the eye. "Keep it together, Jack. Let it play out naturally." But deep down, the worry persisted, a thin, inescapable cloud hanging over a quiet landscape. When he finally stepped out, the streets were lit, the soft yellow light from the street lamps reflecting on the damp night pavement. He took a final deep breath, trying to slow his pulse. In the cab, Jack watched the city stream past pedestrians on the move, storefronts glowing, neon signs flashing a dizzying array of colors. Everything was normal, yet the sense of impending change within him grew stronger. Emily had chosen a quiet, out-of-the-way coffee bar in Soho, a place where they could talk without interruption. As Jack walked in, their eyes met across the room, and a brief weighted silence settled between them. Emily offered a smile, but it didn't quite reach the worry in her eyes. Jack sat down, placing his hands flat on the table, looking directly at his friend, waiting for the words that were about to shift his world. In that moment, Jack recognized that life was an unpredictable thing, and sometimes the smallest, quietest moments become defining turning points. He took one last deep breath, bracing himself for the truth, whether it was the kind that would lift his heart or break it, and then Emily began to speak. Emily took a deep, deliberate breath, her eyes reflecting a mixture of anxiety and sheer determination. "Jack, there's something, I don't even know where to begin." Her voice was tight, but she was visibly fighting to keep her composure. Jack leaned forward, his full attention locked on her, his own heart hammering against his ribs. "Start anywhere, I'm listening." Every single word. Emily began by detailing the recent shifts in her life. The new job at a downtown financial firm had thrust her into an incredibly high-pressure environment. Coupled with that, several private decisions had created deep rifts and worries about her closest relationships. Her voice was slow, each phrase carrying a noticeable weight, though she maintained an outward calm. Jack listened intently, taking small sips of his dark coffee, allowing his focus to center entirely on her. In the small Soho cafe, only a handful of late patrons remained, and the quiet was so profound that Jack felt he could hear his own blood rushing. He wondered why Emily had waited until tonight to share this, and what the real source of her distress was. Instinctively, he wanted to interrupt and ask, but a quiet voice told him to let the narrative unfold. "Tell me everything, Emily, from the beginning. Hold nothing back." Emily hesitated, then started describing a massive project she was handling, a rare opportunity, but one rife with significant risk. The firm demanded a crucial decision from her, the outcome of which could define her entire career trajectory. Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke of the pressure, yet her eyes held firm. Jack recognized the agonizing toll the stress was taking. He reached across the table and briefly squeezed her hand, a silent gesture of solidarity. "I get it, Em. I'm here, and I'll be here through all of it." A few minutes passed in heavy silence, punctuated only by the soft clink of ceramic on the tabletop and Emily's restless shifting. She sighed, a deep release, and finally, the conversation pivoted to something more personal. "Jack, there's one more thing. I don't know how to say it, but I believe you deserve to know." Her voice dropped to a near whisper, but her gaze met his, vulnerable yet pleading for understanding. Jack immediately felt the gravity of her next statement. He inhaled deeply, determined not to let his own emotions overwhelm the moment, and nodded subtly. "I'm here, Emily. Whatever it is, I'll hear it all." Emily then disclosed a long-held family secret, an issue she had been shielding for months. The details emerged slowly, piece by piece, leaving Jack feeling both stunned and deeply concerned. He wasn't sure how to react appropriately, but he knew one thing for certain: patience and a steady ear were the only ways to truly reach his friend. As Emily spoke, Jack didn't just listen to the words. He watched her every move. Her hands were slightly unsteady, her eyes darted away from the table, and she bit her lip as she wrestled with her emotions. Jack took a measured breath, consciously maintaining his calm demeanor to prevent adding any more stress to her shoulders. "Thank you, Em, for trusting me with this. I know this isn't easy," Jack said, his voice low and unwavering. The narrative continued, and Emily started sharing difficulties in her recent social life. Certain old friends, people she had once trusted implicitly, had acted in ways that left her deeply hurt. Her voice was tinged with sorrow and tension, yet filled with refreshing honesty. Jack listened, feeling the weight of her exhaustion and pressure, but also the immense courage it took for her to finally open up. a lingering moment of quiet settled, broken only by the soft background jazz. Jack looked at Emily, seeing a faint light return to her eyes, as if she had found some measure of solace just in the act of sharing. I feel lighter just talking about it, but I'm still worried about what comes next, Emily confessed, her voice barely audible. Jack held her hand firmly, the warmth spreading between them. It's going to be okay, Emily. No matter what happens, I've got your back. We'll figure this out together. Jack's expression was resolute, and in that instant, Emily felt a rare sense of security. Outside the window, the streetlights reflected off residual puddles from the afternoon rain, creating shimmering ethereal shapes on the asphalt. The cafe space felt intimate and still, containing only their quiet whispers and their harmonizing heartbeats. Jack and Emily sat within their own temporary bubble, a world where worries, professional pressures, and secrets were finally being released. Emily continued, discussing her future plans and the challenging choices she now faced. Jack listened, sometimes asking gentle, clarifying questions, sometimes remaining silent, allowing her the space to feel heard and respected. With every story, every detail, Jack realized that true bravery wasn't always about rushing into action, but sometimes about daring to face the truth and share it with someone you trust. A phone chimed somewhere, but Jack paid it no mind. He knew this moment transcended any notification or text. Emily didn't flinch either. She continued speaking, determination burning in her eyes. Jack felt a dual sense of anxiety and relief as his best friend finally laid her burden down. As time wore on, the cafe emptied further. Emily sighed, the tension visibly easing from her face. Jack smiled, trying to infuse calmness into his gaze. I'm proud of you, Em, whatever happens. You're handling this with guts. Emily offered a small smile in return, the first genuine relaxation she had shown all evening. Jack left the cafe with a complex swirl of feelings, anxiety mixed with resolute hope. He knew tonight's conversation was just the starting line, but a monumental turning point nonetheless. They would both face tough decisions and churning emotions, but they were ready to tackle them together. On the walk back, Jack looked at the city lights, the storefronts, the tall corporate buildings, and the car headlights creating a shimmering ocean of light. He took a deep, steadying breath, absorbing the vibrant, relentless pulse of Manhattan, and told himself, no matter what comes, it'll be okay. We'll ride this out. Back in his apartment, Jack put his phone down and looked out the window, realizing that sometimes, the secrets and untold stories are exactly what bind people together. He knew that tonight, his friendship with Emily had moved into a new chapter, one filled with challenge, but also unwavering hope. Night had fully settled over Manhattan, the glow of streetlights reflecting sharply off the last remaining puddles from the earlier rain. Jack stepped out of his apartment building, pulling on his jacket, walking slowly down the quieter side street. The air was cold, mixing with the faint, sweet scent of city greenery, leaving him feeling simultaneously isolated and intensely keyed up. Emily's image dominated his thoughts, and he felt a palpable anxiety about what the next stage of their conversation would bring. Emily had chosen a small, tucked-away bistro, the kind of cozy spot where conversation felt both natural and private. When Jack walked in, Emily's eyes immediately found his. She smiled, but the smile was tight, unable to fully mask the lingering worry. "Hey, Jack," she said, her voice soft. Jack nodded, returning a genuine smile. "Hey Em, hope I'm not too early." They settled at a window booth, bathed in the soft, warm glow of the bistro's interior lamps. Menus were placed on the table, but neither paid them much attention. Instead, they focused on each other, searching for the right words to navigate the crucial discussion ahead. The silence that fell was prolonged yet not uncomfortable. On the contrary, it felt intimate, like two people preparing to lower their shields. Emily finally broke the quiet, her voice dropping a notch. "Jack, I know there were a lot of things I left unsaid, but tonight, I need to lay it all out." He nodded solemnly, his eyes meeting hers. "I'm here to listen. No judgment, no interruptions." She began where she had left off, detailing the pressures at the firm, then gradually transitioning into the deeply personal issues she had been concealing for months. She spoke of friction with colleagues, the painful decisions she had to make, and the gnawing fear of failure. Jack listened, occasionally asking a gentle, open-ended question purely to draw out clarity, never to criticize. At one point, Emily went silent, her eyes fixed outside the window, as if searching for an answer in the faint, hazy light of the late-night city. Jack let her be, understanding that sometimes silence was the only way to receive. He took a quiet breath, feeling the echo of her restlessness and the slight tremor of her hands on the tabletop. Emily resumed, this time venturing into even more delicate territory, the buried emotions, the family anxieties, and her recent distance from their wider circle of friends. She confessed feeling intensely lonely at times, even when surrounded by people who cared. Jack said nothing, simply reaching for her hand, his gaze radiating pure empathy. I'm right here, Emily. You don't have to hide anything from me. A visible lightness flickered in Emily's eyes, as if a significant part of her internal burden had been lifted. She offered a fragile, quiet smile. Thank you, Jack. I knew I could trust you. Jack nodded, smiling back, feeling a wave of relief himself. He realized that sometimes the simple presence of a true friend mattered more than any advice or concrete solution. Time slipped by unnoticed as the bistro grew quieter. The background music played softly, and the occasional clink of cutlery provided the only interruption, creating a space that was both warm and fiercely private. Jack and Emily continued their conversation, though it was less about talking and more about listening, allowing emotions to flow freely, without the need for immediate analysis. Emily began to outline her future intentions, her career aspirations, and the deep-seated fears she had never articulated before. Jack listened, sometimes nodding, or just holding her gaze, letting her feel his unwavering commitment. With every story, every raw piece of sharing, their bond deepened, growing stronger under the intimate Soho lights. After a long pause, Emily looked at Jack, her eyes glistening. Jack, this isn't going to be easy, but I believe that if you're by my side, I can get through it. Her voice was laced with hope, mixed with a vulnerable anxiety. Jack tightened his grip on her hand, his expression firm with resolve. I'm always going to be here, whatever this challenge is, we'll face it together. Outside, the yellow light of the street lamps reflected in the water, creating a dazzling, elongated sheen on the sidewalk. Late-night Manhattan was still buzzing, but inside this small bistro, time seemed suspended. Jack and Emily sat there, in their private world, where every worry, secret, and emotion was laid bare and embraced with understanding. They shared a long silence, only the music and their breathing filling the space. Jack felt a certainty that this evening marked the beginning of a new chapter in their relationship. Emily felt it too. The security she had been searching for had finally materialized. As they left, they walked together down the quieter streets, the lamps casting long shadows ahead of them on the wet pavement. Jack looked at Emily and offered a peaceful smile. Tonight, we cleared the air, and that's the most important step. Emily nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude and trust. A complex mix of relief and responsibility settled in Jack's heart. He knew that from this point forward, every decision and action would carry more weight. But he also recognized a profound truth. Sometimes listening, just being there, is enough to make a difference in someone's life. Jack woke up the next morning feeling a peculiar mix of relief and disorientation. Last night's conversation still echoed vividly in his mind. Every detail, every confession from Emily, was etched in his memory. Soft sunlight cut through the apartment blinds, casting warm, contemplative stripes across the walls of his small space. He sat on the edge of his bed, nursing a hot cup of coffee, staring out the window. Manhattan was its usual buzzing, cell phones blaring, footsteps tapping, vendors calling out. But today, Jack felt the city's rhythm was slightly muted. His mind was still entirely absorbed in Emily's story, the secrets, the fears, and the profound trust she had placed in him. Laura, the regular barista, texted him a casual check-in. The usual strong black coffee today. Jack smiled, typing back, the usual, thanks Laura. Might be a little distracted today. Even these brief exchanges felt grounding, like a small anchor connecting him to the normal world. He got ready for work. Stepping outside to the cool kiss of the autumn air, he exchanged greetings with a few colleagues on the walk, but his focus wasn't on the daily grind. His thoughts kept cycling back to Emily and the weight she was carrying. Part of him wanted to call her immediately, but Jack reminded himself, give her space. Let things breathe. At the office, he settled at his desk, powering up his laptop, yet unable to concentrate. Every email and Slack notification blurred before the constant hum of worry about Emily. He gazed out the window, watching the daylight illuminate the sharp edges of the skyscrapers, wondering what she was doing and how she was feeling. A mix of anxiety and curiosity kept his pulse steadily elevated. At lunchtime, Jack decided to take a long, deliberate walk around the neighborhood near his office to clear the stress. He moved through the side streets, past old brick buildings, boutique shops, and cozy cafes, The cacophony of traffic blending with voices formed the characteristic soundtrack of the city. Jack took a deep breath, trying to organize his thoughts and prepare mentally for the coming days. In the late afternoon, Jack got a call from Emily. Her voice was soft, but held a thread of excitement. "Jack, are you free tonight? I really want to take a walk, maybe talk things through a little more." Jack nodded before he remembered she couldn't see him. "Absolutely. I can clear my schedule. I'll come pick you up." A wave of eagerness mixed with the underlying worry surged through him that evening. When Jack arrived to meet Emily, the streetlights reflected brightly on the dew-kissed pavement. She was already waiting on the sidewalk, holding a small clutch, her eyes scanning the street. As Jack approached, Emily's smile was wide, radiating relief and trust. "Hi, Jack," she said, her voice quiet but warm. "Hey, Emily," Jack replied, trying to keep his own emotions in check. They walked through the quieter streets of Soho, the glow from the cafes and shops illuminating the path ahead. Emily opened up further, sharing more thoughts, tentative future plans, and lingering private anxieties. Jack listened attentively, occasionally offering a gentle question to clarify, taking care not to pressure her. Stopping near a bench in a small, tucked-away park, Emily sat down, looking up at the faint stars visible above the city skyline. "Jack, I know things are going to be different, but I want you to know, I feel safe when you're around." Her voice was shaky, her eyes shining with sincerity. Jack sat beside her, placing his hand over hers, his gaze full of warmth and protection. They sat in silence for a while, listening only to the wind whispering through the branches, the rustle of leaves, and the steady rhythm of their own hearts. Jack felt the truth of the moment. Sometimes, simply being present, simply listening, was enough to soothe a troubled soul. Emily took a deep breath, leaning slightly against his shoulder. Finding a rare moment of peace, they resumed their walk, discussing the future and the difficult choices Emily now faced. Jack didn't rush to offer solutions. He simply accompanied her, showing her she was not alone. With every step down the dimly lit path, the streetlights casting long, angular shadows, they shared moments that felt like time had stopped just for them. Emily detailed the new work project, the professional risks, the fear of failure, and the complex office politics. Jack listened, sometimes squeezing her hand or holding her gaze, allowing her to feel his genuine concern and belief in her. He realized that patience and active listening were far more valuable than any immediate advice. After a while, they paused outside another small coffee shop, and Emily suggested they grab a hot tea. The interior was calm, with only a few stragglers and soft background music creating a cozy atmosphere. Emily shared stories about old friends, past disappointments, and the small joys she had missed. Jack listened, nodding occasionally, or resting his hand on hers, conveying safety. As they walked back toward Emily's apartment, the long lines of streetlights slanted across the wet road. Emily sighed, a hint of cheerfulness in her tone. "Thank you, Jack, tonight really meant a lot." Jack smiled. "Same here, Emily, I'm glad you felt comfortable sharing." As they parted ways at her door, she turned back to him, her eyes reflecting gratitude and deep trust. "See you tomorrow, okay?" Jack nodded. "Definitely. Sleep well, Emily." She smiled, closed the door, and Jack stood there for a moment, taking a deep breath, absorbing the night beat of Manhattan, and the unique, powerful connection that had just solidified between them. On the walk back to his place, Jack processed everything that had transpired. He understood that true trust and honest sharing had the power to change emotions and create profound inner strength for both of them. He told himself that from now on, every decision and action would be more significant. But he also knew that with shared companionship, any challenge could be overcome. That night, Manhattan was steeped in the golden wash of streetlights. The towering buildings reflected sharply on the pavement, slick with residual moisture from the evening rain. Jack drove slowly toward Emily's apartment, a familiar knot of anticipation and concern twisting in his stomach. His heart picked up speed as he thought about what more Emily had to share. Part of him was eager to help, the other was cautious, afraid she might unveil even greater worries. Emily was waiting on her small balcony, gazing distantly at the city skyline, a warm mug clutched in her hands. When Jack stepped inside, her eyes brightened faintly, though her smile remained a little forced. "Hey, Jack," she greeted, her voice soft but tinged with nervousness. "Hey, Emily," Jack replied, offering a warm smile intended to soothe her anxiety. They settled onto the sofa near the window, where the streetlights managed to filter through the thin curtains. Emily took a long, steadying breath and began recounting the pressures of the past few days. The relentless job stress, the demands from her boss, and the minor, draining conflicts within her family. Her voice cracked slightly as she mentioned a critical, high-stakes decision looming over her big project, filling Jack with simultaneous concern and a renewed urge to reassure her. I don't know if I'm making the right call, and if it tanks, what happens then? Emily sighed, her gaze dropping to the floor. Jack grasped her hand, looking directly into her eyes, his voice low and firm. Emily, whatever happens, I'm right here. We'll figure out a way through it together. You are not facing this alone. Emily felt a sliver of the weight lift, but the fear was still palpable. She elaborated on the subtle pressures from friends and colleagues, the persistent feeling of isolation even when surrounded by people. Jack listened silently, his eyes conveying profound understanding. He felt every wobble in her voice, every slight tremor of her hands. After a moment of silence, Emily offered a small, broken laugh, though sadness still clouded her eyes. I feel so much better just saying it all out loud, but the future still terrifies me. Jack smiled gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. Fear is normal, but I believe if we tackle this as a team, we'll be fine. They decided to take a slow walk around her neighborhood. The street lamps reflected off the damp asphalt, creating shimmering ribbons of light. Emily shared more about difficult coworkers who were wearing her down, and past opportunities she had missed because of paralyzing fear. Jack listened, sometimes placing his hand on hers, a silent reminder that she didn't have to face this by herself anymore. Stopping at a small, quiet park, Emily paused, watching the few autumn leaves drift down onto the ground. Jack, I know things are about to get harder, but I want you to know, I trust you. Her voice was shaky, but her eyes were firm with resolution. Jack smiled warmly, wrapping his arm around her shoulder, his gaze protective. I trust you too, Emily. No matter what comes, we'll see it through. A moment of profound quiet passed, filled only by the wind through the trees, the rustle of leaves, and the synchronized beat of their hearts. Emily leaned lightly into Jack's shoulder, absorbing the peace she had so long searched for. Jack took a deep breath, recognizing his commitment to be her friend, her emotional anchor, and to understand that sometimes listening was the most powerful thing he could do. But as they continued their walk, a notification flashed across Emily's phone screen. It was a text from her boss, Emily. Emergency meeting first thing tomorrow. Prepare all documents. Emily looked at Jack, her eyes widening slightly with renewed worry. Work stuff. Looks like it's escalating faster than I thought. Jack placed his hand on her arm firmly. It's okay. We'll handle it together. They stopped at another cozy coffee shop where Emily bought them hot tea. The space was quiet and warm, with soft music and minimal patrons. Emily talked more about complex relationships, friends she had trusted who had recently let her down, and the small, necessary disappointments of adult life. Jack listened, nodding, transmitting a feeling of absolute security. When they left, they walked back toward Emily's place. Along the way, the long lines of streetlight cast intimate shadows on the wet pavement. Emily sighed, but a lightness was detectable in her tone. Thank you, Jack. This evening really mattered. Jack smiled. Me too, Emily. I'm glad you let me in. At her apartment door, they paused. Emily turned back, her eyes full of gratitude and reliance. See you tomorrow. Jack nodded. Definitely. Sleep well, Em. She smiled, went inside, and closed the door. Jack stood there a moment longer, breathing deeply, feeling the late-night pulse of Manhattan and the powerful, new connection forged between them. On his drive home, Jack contemplated everything that had unfolded, the vulnerability, the fear, the pressure, and the profound faith Emily had placed in him. He realized that sometimes, presence and active listening were enough to create resilience for both of them, and from this day forward, every decision and action would carry a new level of importance. The next morning, a thin veil of Manhattan mist still clung to the city, the towering skyscrapers gently kissed by the pale early-day sun. Jack was up earlier than usual, his mind still cycling through the previous night's conversation. Emily's words, the flicker of vulnerability in her eyes, and the cryptic message from her boss. It all settled into a heavy knot, making him feel that today wouldn't be simple. He brewed a strong cup of coffee and leaned against the window, watching the street below slowly bustle to life. A new sun was rising, but in Jack's gut was a murky sense of foreboding, like something much bigger was quietly bearing down. That intuition sharpened the moment his phone vibrated. It was Emily. Jack snatched the call. Her voice was small, shaky, but she was forcing composure. I'm so sorry to call this early, but something's happened. Jack's heart plummeted. Are you okay? What is it? Emily took a deep, shuddering breath. Her pace rushed. I got an email at 6 a.m. My boss wants me to present the entire data section of the project. Alone, no team support. I don't understand why they're doing this to me. Jack could hear the fear and the intense pressure in every word. He leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes for a beat to focus. Take a breath. I'm listening, Jack. This project was assigned to 3 people. I was only responsible for one small piece. But now they've dumped it all on me. If I fail, they have their excuse to fire me. I think they're trying to force me out. Jack's chest tightened. He knew how brilliant Emily was, but he also understood that the corporate world could be brutal and unfair. What paperwork do you need to prep? Jack asked, his tone crisp and professional. A lot. I put together some of it last night, but it's not enough to cover everything. Jack glanced at the clock. 7:10 a.m. When is the meeting? 9 o'clock sharp. Jack sprang to his feet, grabbing his car keys. I'm on my way. Don't touch anything. We'll prep this together. On the other end of the line, he heard a choked exhale, as if Emily had just been pulled back from a sheer cliff edge. Jack, seriously, thank you. Jack's response was soft but firm. We're a team. Remember, race against the clock. Almost exactly 30 minutes later, Jack was at Emily's apartment door. She opened it, looking exhausted, her hair hastily tied up, still wearing a baggy t-shirt and sweatpants, as if her mind hadn't yet registered the start of the day. But in those tired eyes, Jack saw a vital spark of trust aimed solely at him. Come in. Emily's desk was buried under a fortress of documents, her laptop open, data files scattered everywhere. She stood before the mess, her hands slightly shaking. Jack walked over, gently placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Sit down. We'll take this one piece at a time. We got this. Emily sat, and Jack pulled a chair right up next to her, diving into the reports. He drilled her on every detail, quickly analyzing the core data points, and restructuring her presentation for maximum clarity and logical flow. Emily focused intensely, but Jack could still feel the tremor of anxiety in her every movement. Jack, if I mess this up, he cut her off, his voice absolute. You won't mess it up. I'm right here. Emily looked at him for one long, silent second. It wasn't the look of dependence, but a deep, profound gratitude, mixed with something that made Jack's heart strangely warm. Time blurred. When the clock hit 8:45 a.m., Emily sat up straight, taking a deep breath. Okay, I think I'm ready. Jack rose with her, moving toward the door. Before Emily could reach the handle, Jack gently took her hand. She turned back, her eyes widening slightly in surprise. Emily, I believe in you, not because you're strong, but because even though you're terrified, you're still walking forward. That's true grit. Emily's face softened, the tension visibly draining away. Double quotes, ... Thank you, Jack. Let's go, he smiled. I'm driving you to the office. Emily nodded. They left the apartment, stepping out into the soft morning light of the hallway, heading toward the moment of decision, a meeting that could change Emily's career, and also open a new door between them that both could feel, even if neither had spoken it aloud. The next day, Manhattan was bright but cool. The long streets bathed in a gentle sunlight, a crisp breeze rustling through the trees. Jack woke up feeling an excited anticipation mixed with a profound sense of purpose. He knew this day was critical, not just for his own schedule, but for Emily. He took a sip of his coffee, looked out his window, and affirmed, I'm going to be there for her, no matter the outcome. Emily began her day with a blend of nervousness and determination. The final crucial meeting was set, but she no longer felt the biting isolation of the past weeks. She recalled Jack's encouraging words, his eyes full of belief, and the sense of peace he offered. She took a deep breath, preparing to face the challenge head-on. I can do this, and I'm not alone. Jack arrived early at his office, trying to focus, but his thoughts kept drifting to Emily. He remembered her anxious but resolute expression the previous night, and the painful stories she had shared. Every call and email reinforced the quiet responsibility he felt to stand by her. At noon, Jack's phone vibrated with a text from Emily. Jack, meeting's done. Better result than I dared hope for. Thank you for being my anchor. Jack smiled, a wave of profound relief washing over him. Everything's going to be fine, Emily. I'm always here. That afternoon, Jack and Emily decided to take a late stroll through Central Park to decompress from the morning's stress. Golden leaves scattered across the pathways, crunching softly underfoot. The sound of birdsong and children's laughter created a backdrop that was both quiet and vibrantly alive. Emily opened up about the recent pressures, explaining how she learned to trust her own judgment while simultaneously cherishing Jack's presence. Jack listened, occasionally holding her hand, grounding her. I realize that sometimes, all it takes is one person to truly believe in you and stand with you for the pressure to feel lighter, Emily confessed. Jack smiled. That's right, and I'll always be that person, Emily. They stopped at a park bench, where the late afternoon light filtered through the canopy, creating soft, dappled shadows. Emily leaned slightly onto Jack's shoulder, her eyes alight with renewed faith. Thank you for listening, for showing up. I feel stronger than ever. Jack placed his arm around her. I'm happy you're strong, but remember, we're stronger together. After a long, comfortable silence, Emily took Jack's hand. Jack, I want to tell you something. I'm not afraid anymore. You gave me the courage to face everything. Jack looked at her, his expression deeply moved. Emily, you did the same for me. You reminded me what true companionship and honesty mean. They continued walking as the twilight approached, the light casting a warm glow on the paved paths, the towering buildings reflecting the colors of the sunset. Their conversation shifted to the future, new career ideas, trips they wanted to take together, and the small, important joys they planned to share. Every shared story, every laugh, deepened their undeniable connection. On their way back, they stopped at their familiar coffee shop, where the warm lighting and soft music offered a sense of security. Emily spoke about her family, the expectations she once felt suffocated by, and how she learned that trust and shared vulnerability could soothe every anxiety. Jack listened, nodding, his gaze full of empathy. Leaving the shop, darkness had fully arrived. The streetlights reflected brilliantly on the damp pavement, creating shimmering lines of light. Emily sighed, but her voice was joyful. Thank you, Jack. This evening was exactly what I needed. Jack smiled. Me too. I'm grateful you shared everything with me. At Emily's apartment door, they paused. Her eyes were full of appreciation and deep trust. See you tomorrow. Jack nodded. Absolutely. Sleep well, Emily. She smiled, stepped inside, and closed the door. Jack stood there for a moment, taking a deep breath, feeling the pulse of Manhattan and realizing that they had overcome the worst of the pressure, faced their fears, and found peace together. The next day, they met early in the park where they often walked. Emily spoke of the positive shifts at work and how she was learning to manage pressure and maintain her professional composure. Jack watched her proudly, recognizing Emily's growth and new strength. They walked together through the familiar streets, talking, laughing, sharing small, meaningful everyday observations. Their footsteps on the pavement, the exchanged glances, forged an enduring emotional current. Emily leaned into Jack, her eyes radiating happiness. Thank you for staying, Jack. I'm not alone anymore. Jack smiled, hugging her close. And I'm happy you're not alone. We'll take the next steps together. As the evening drew in, the pale light filtered through the trees. Emily and Jack sat on the park bench, looking out at the city. They knew that challenges still lay ahead, but now they had each other, armed with trust and shared commitment. It was a conclusion that felt both complete and full of future promise. Jack took Emily's hand, whispering, "Whatever comes, I'm in this with you." Emily smiled, her eyes filled with trust. "And I with you, Jack, will face everything." Together, the glow of the streetlights, the rustling leaves, and the steady beat of their hearts harmonized with the city's rhythm, creating a peaceful, meaningful moment. It was an ending that closed the chapter of conflict, yet opened a new journey, a journey of trust, sharing, and companionship, where Jack and Emily found their quiet anchor amidst the relentless pace of Manhattan.